Welcome to Women Who Brand, a podcast that spotlights inspiring women in the creative industry. I'm Alejandra Salazar, founder and CEO of CROING, which is part of the 0.1% of creative agencies founded by a woman. And I'll be your host today. This podcast is part of an initiative of CROING to inspire women in the industry by sharing the journeys and insights of those who are leading the way. Women Who Brand are creative, strategic, and visionary forces in the world of marketing. They make an impact in both the role and the industry as a whole. Whether through campaigns, storytelling, or experiences, they shape how people perceive, interact with, and remember a brand. In this episode, we talk with Kimberly Clotman, the Senior Director and Marketing Enablement Lead at Pfizer. We talk about how there are so many opportunities to tell stories in the pharmaceutical industry and how reading data isn't always what's explicitly written, but rather about listening to the testimony people give. And that's where you can find powerful insights that help you get closer to people. She shared advice for women in the industry: don't wait, build. Literally write the role you are looking for and present it. That might just get you there. Kim is calm, smart, and passionate. A great combination when you are leading teams and want to create marketing that really connects with humans. If you're here for that, the way I am, please join me in welcoming our next woman who brand, Kimberly Clotman. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
I am too. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. For those who don't know her, Kimberly is the Senior Director of Marketing Enablement Lead at Pfizer. Yes, Pfizer. This is the type of guest I'm bringing you here. Kim and I met through her colleague Christian, who kindly introduces us. He's a Latino that I connect with him. He has been so supportive. I love the way he sees marketing in general. And when we met in the Pfizer offices, he was like, I want you to meet Kim. She's amazing. And he was right. We had a great conversation that time we met, and you shared your journey and your thoughts on how you see marketing and the role creativity plays in shifting behaviors. And I really connect with that. And I was like, dude, I really want her in the podcast. So I'm really grateful that you say yes, because I'm sure we'll have a great time and it will be really inspiring for our audience, because I mean, the way you lead. But I don't want to spoil much. I just leave it for you to talk and tell us. You are the first guest from the pharmaceutical industry in this podcast. At CROING, we have long experience working with brands like Novartis, for example, so this makes this episode even more special. So I will start. Tell us about what led you to pursue a career in marketing and advertising, and how do you feel in your current role at Pfizer?
So I would say, going back over 20 years at this point, I was drawn to advertising because it really, for me, is the intersection of psychology, which I was a psych major for a time in undergrad, and business. And so that blend has always really fascinated me. I've always been curious about what drives people to act, and advertising really gave me that lens and a front row seat to be able to look at human behavior. Now, in terms of pharma, I did not plan to end up in healthcare. That was not my dream as a little girl. But once I got into pharma, I've stayed over these last, again, 20 plus years, because I really do believe in the mission. And so I know there's a lot of noise out there, but at its core, what we do is help people live longer and live better by educating patients, caregivers, providers. And so in my role at Pfizer, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that I really do consider myself an agent who brings clarity to chaos. And I help teams connect to strategy and execution in a different way than maybe they had been thinking about before.
Love it. I kind of want to be that person for someone. I love how you phrase it. Love it. So, Kim, in the pharmaceutical industry, there's a huge responsibility behind every idea, since we're dealing with people's health and well-being. So how do you evaluate whether an idea or initiative is the right one to move forward with? Do you have a specific process, or is more of a feeling for you?
It's a little bit of both. So from my perspective, when you have a really great idea, it hits on two levels. So one, it makes you feel something, like it's emotional, and it solves an actual problem. And so when we're thinking about, when we're all in the room and we're sitting with an agency partner and we're looking at ideas, maybe one of the questions to ask is, would I even care about this if I wasn't paid to be here? And if the answer is no, then I think that should tell you something. It is the idea grounded in a real insight, not a fact that you might have gotten from a market research deck, but a real insight, and will it drive behavior? And so I was thinking about that. And one of the things that you can't see behind me is I started my career in advertising on American Airlines. And there's a goodbye picture on my shelf here when I left.
Ah.
And there's a long story behind that I won't go into. But American Airlines was my first agency job, first job out of college. And one of my jobs as the junior marketer on the team was to go back and look at and take an inventory of all the creative campaigns that had been run going back decades. And there was one creative execution, a TV commercial. And at the time, or I should say that particular TV ad, it's about a guy. He's a businessman, traditional. He's been traveling. You can see this. He's been on the road a long time. He's got this family at home, and he's coming back from wherever. It was an international TV ad, or an ad to highlight Americans' international service. So he's coming back from some country, and he gets to the airport and he looks out the window, and there's an American Airlines plane. And the tag and the voiceover says, "Almost home." And so that idea that, no matter where you are in the world, that when you see an American Airlines plane, like that represents something to you as being almost home. And so that line, and this is going back probably 30 years almost at this point, that line really stuck with me. It has an emotional resonance that all these years later still hits me right here as someone who travels quite frequently and has a family here at home. And so when an idea makes you feel something like that and it's meant to solve a challenge, you have a winner.
Love it. I travel a lot as well, and I was like, I don't cry. So beautiful. I feel it's on those moments that if you with marketing touch those specific moments that really touch your heart, you win. But yeah, it's such a process. So thank you for sharing. I want to ask you, because I hope that in the current role you are, your ideas might be heard, right? By many of your team members, but throughout your career, how do you ensure your voice and creative ideas were heard, especially in such a regulated industry?
So I know that this might not come across either today or when we initially met, but I'm actually quite reserved. And for people that have gotten to know me over the years, they're like, "That's not you." And I'm like, "No, it really is." And so when I'm in a room, I try to be the person that speaks with purpose. I mean, we've all been in those meetings where people talk just to like fill the air, right? And so when I contribute, I try to ask smart questions that really do help clarify the thinking and really try to push it so that there's space for bigger ideas to emerge. When it comes to the work, I also try to hold space for what I might consider to be the unexpected. So not just building off of like yes and, which we talk a lot about in meetings these days, but like how can you help people rally around an idea that is safe enough that can allow you to be bold? We are an industry that, to the point that you made earlier, fairly conservative. We're talking about people's health and people's lives. There's regulations and we want to do the right thing. But that part of that is leaving space for that creativity. And there's some great work out there from Pfizer and others that really does, tug at the emotional heartstrings, but also then, educates in a way that's responsible.
Yeah, which proved that there is a space for creativity. It's just that, you need to find it and be open to it. Because I feel sometimes, for example, we had the experience with Novartis, and I feel sometimes for my team at the time, it was like just by the fact that they knew that there were, a lot of restrictions, they wouldn't go further. And I feel that's a mistake, because I think you need to go all in and then take the regulation and say, okay, this may be this way, but think bigger and then regulate it. Because if you start regulated yourself, like when you're thinking on creative ideas, then what's left to do?
Exactly.
So talking about creativity and the unexpected, what trend in marketing excites you the most right now, and why?
A trend in marketing that excites me. One of the things that I'm personally really excited about, and I feel like sort of an evangelist, is really the idea of these seamless experiences where it's brand, behavior, and utility all together in a line. And so in the pharma industry, we often talk about an experience being frictionless. So for example, the process to go from getting a diagnosis to being prescribed a therapy, or the process of being prescribed a therapy to actually receiving that therapy from the pharmacy. Those experiences aren't always frictionless. There's a lot of things that happen in between those points that can be very difficult for patients to navigate, even someone like myself who's been in this industry for a long time. But the idea behind a frictionless experience is what I'm excited about. Let me give you an example of something that I look at, and I think that's really great. So I was watching something on television, and I have a smart TV in my office, and the idea that you can click when you see an ad and put that in your Amazon cart, now that is a frictionless experience.
Yeah.
Or the idea, so I felt sick. This was going back a couple of months ago. I felt sick. I took a test. I had the flu. I went online. I had a chat visit with a healthcare provider who then wrote me a script of Tamiflu. Again, it got added to my cart, and then it was shipped overnight to me, and then I started. And so that to me is what a frictionless experience, a seamless experience should look like, and without all of the hassle. And it's that kind of integration that is not only technically or tech enabled, but it's really behavioral driven. So
I love
that's
that.
what that looks like.
And I love that. And I think that's also what people is expecting more and more, because especially with social media starting, but then first internet, then social media, then AI, people is not here to wait, right? Like they really need things to happen, and they want things to happen in a way that it just makes sense, that is like part of, I don't think it's necessarily natural, because, it's not, because technology is not the natural thing, but it's natural the way we consume things right now. So how we expect things to be. And it also, if we use technology and processes and marketing to make people's life easier and better, then I feel that's the whole point, right? Then, that's a win. So I'm excited about that as well. When I ask that question, people tend to say AI, which I get, but I love how you phrase it in a way that is, this frictionless experience that actually works, because it's kind of there sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't close the circle every time. So I love that. Okay, in your opinion, which is the easiest and the hardest generation or target audience to reach right now, and why?
Ooh, that's a great question. I don't know that this answer would stay the same over time, but right now I think in the industry that I sit in, the pharmaceutical industry, it is really hard to reach younger consumers. I think in general, pharmaceutical products, or when people find themselves needing pharmaceutical products, it tends to lean toward, an older adult, a Gen Xer, if you were, and that's what I am. So, I was telling someone the other day that I was at a presentation and they were talking about social media platforms and looking at the audience overlap. And some of the platforms I'm aware of, even if I don't use TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram. And then as the presenter got further out, I'm like, I don't have any idea what he's talking about. And I realized that is like my age is showing. And so I think that it is easier to reach people my age and above, because we still probably consume media in a way that is more traditional and maybe more the way that the industry is used to serving up media to us. It's TV, to some extent it's radio. I mean, someone even asked a question about direct mail the other day, and I still get actual physical mail, which is not common. I think from that perspective, Gen Z is probably one of the hardest. I mean, they're on so many different devices, so many places to reach them, maybe disconnected in a way that my generation is not. So I think if I were just looking from a generational perspective, where pharma is right now in terms of taking advantage of all of this tech, AI, so on and so forth, that the industry is still geared towards traditional, and therefore I think it's easier to reach an older audience, which tends to lean more traditional. But I think if you were to ask me that question 5 years from now, I would give you a different answer.
Of course. And I asked you or generation, but if we take the generation out of the question, target audience, Like, what would it be the hardest target audience in general? You will stay with Gen Z right now, or is another audience, regardless of age, that you think it's hard to reach right now?
I think in general there are some commonalities that cut across age that do make, depending on the therapeutic area, do make consumers or patients, potential patients, hard to reach in general. When I think about trying to get close to a customer or meet the customer where they are, there's so many places where customers are, and we're on multiple devices all at the same time.
Of
We have
course.
a laptop going, we have an iPad going, we have an
Yeah,
iPhone going, we have our smart TV going, and so
exactly.
the dilution of our attention spans along with that, I think, makes it challenging to reach people and to serve them up the information that you think that would be helpful or valuable for them in order to make a decision. So from that perspective, it's harder to reach people in general nowadays. And so marketers have to be creative. Now that
Yeah.
is unless you have a ton of money. I mean, sometimes, when you're watching television, it's like, oh, I've seen this ad like 40 times already. So, and you know that they have a big media spend. But I think the
Yeah.
reality is there are big brands out there that do have big dollars and can saturate the airwaves, as it were. But most of the brands that I work with, and I work with a lot of rare disease brands, don't have those kind of dollars, and the patient populations are much smaller. So not only are we reaching a smaller audience, we need to be more efficient in how we reach them.
Okay, it's so interesting. Definitely. So, our audience in this podcast, talking about audiences, includes many women in the industry who hold leadership position in companies. And
Mhm.
yet, even with all their knowledge and experience, it can still feel challenging to put themselves out there to start building their personal professional brands. I know that that's something that you're building. So,
Mhm.
what has it been building your personal and professional brand? When did you decide to start doing it? And what's something rewarding that has happened to you so far because of the fact that you are building I mean, I don't know if it's conscious, I guess it is, but I mean, you will tell me more that has happened to you so far.
In asking the question, the first thing, honestly, that popped to mind, I was thinking about writers. And sometimes writers will tell you that they, songwriters, singers, that they create not because they're looking for an audience, but because they feel like they have something to say. And so whether you have, one follower or a million followers, it's about being authentic and true to who you are. So when I think about living into and becoming a woman who brands, I think about myself and the journey that I've been on, and about getting to a point where I feel like I have something to say, something unique voice to add. And so then I just started to write, which is more of my preferred medium of creativity. That's who I am. And so I would say that the journey has been sort of a circuitous one, but it's been a really interesting one along the way. And while it didn't start out as being purposeful, I'm also aware that how people see me, how I represent myself, how I put myself out there, I want to make sure how people are perceiving me is the way that I want to be perceived.
Love
And
that.
so
Yeah.
I have to control the narrative.
Exactly. That I was about to say that it gives you the ability to control your own narrative. And for women in positions like yours, of course they build their professional brand within their organization because it's the only way for you to go higher and higher. So it's just how to translate that into a broader audience. And I love your advice, or at least your experience, which can, become an advice for others, which is starting with the medium that you feel the most comfortable with, because that makes it easier as well. For you is writing, and for others might be video, or I mean, you name it. Love that. Thank you for sharing. So last question of this section. If you were a brand yourself, what would be your personal slogan and brand colors?
Ooh, brand colors and a slogan. The way that I perceive myself and the way that people who know me well, I think, tend to perceive me is that I am calm. I'd like to think that I'm clever, strategic, with a little bit of sass. And so I would say that if I had, a personal slogan, I would say, I love it when a plan comes together, and I will serve you sass, or I should say, I will serve you calm with a little sass on the side.
I love it. Love it. It's so clever. Love it.
Oh, you asked about colors, and
Yes.
very big. Green's one of my favorite colors, which is
I
why I'm
love
wearing green.
it.
I would say that for me, I tend to be more monochromatic in terms of a palette. So navies, blacks, blues, green, because to me, those colors represent classic, focused, grounded. But I always like to throw in a little pop of something unexpected. So whether that's an unexpected piece of jewelry, unexpected color like a scarf, or something to accent. So it's this idea of being classic with a little bit of irreverence.
Love it. And I think it's connected to, which is, you talk about marketing in the other question, but you said like the unexpected, right? For marketing, it applies to your personal style as well, like having this touch. So now the second part of the podcast is more of one question I want to ask to go a little bit deeper. One of the things that resonated with me the most when I first met you was how you view marketing as a tool to drive real behavior change. And in an industry like pharma, where health and well-being are at the heart of everything, that responsibility becomes even more meaningful. At CROING, my agency, we have the chance to work with several pharmaceutical brands, and we deeply understand like what that responsibility means, from a clear and transparent communication to monitoring how people interpret and react to every message, right? So creativity in this space has to go hand to hand with empathy and strategy. So I would love to ask you, what role do you think creativity plays in pharmaceutical marketing today, especially when the goal is to inspire, trust, and connect with people? And what are the challenges and opportunities that excite you the most about what's ahead for Pfizer?
Sure. Maybe I can take the second question you asked first. So,
Okay.
and I would answer it by starting by saying, one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about what we do, from my perspective, is that it's all data and it's all science, right? It's clinical endpoints, it's outcomes, it's clinical trials. It's all data and clinical bound, and there's no magic involved. And people assume, and a lot of times they're proven right, that the work that we produce, or that pharmaceutical companies produce, is dry. It's functional. It's running through fields with flowers. But I honestly believe that marketing, even healthcare marketing, can be about emotion. It can be about identity and about story. And so data is the foundation of what we do, but it's not the whole story. I mean, we have to make people feel something. And by feeling something, that's also where trust comes in. We want people to trust us, to trust the medicines that we market, that are going to make a real difference in people's lives. And so for me, that's where behavioral science and really brand storytelling come together to create that magic.
Love it. And I think I also agree, because when we started 10 years ago and we got this Novartis as a client, I remember some people saying like, well, pharma is not as fun. And to me, it was like, it's also because the way I wanted to do this agency, which was always with the focus on connecting with people, because I feel marketing kind of mirror culture, and brands have the power to really show how culture is, to reflect culture, so people can feel they belong. Like, that's always in my mind. And if I want to get to emotion, like to really connect with people on a deeper level, I mean, what best than health? Because I feel also we live in a world where every day, if we are healthy, it's like that's the way it is. But at some point, things change, right? The moment we feel something that it's not normal, it's like we face something that I don't feel if we are aware every day of how big of a role health plays in life, especially when you're younger. And talking about the Gen Zs, right? People is like, just not everyone, because we can assume, but in general, you are not as, oh, hell, I need to do my checks and things like that. You are just living because you are 20, 35, whatever. But then health issues or situations can really define everything. It's everything. It's like your motor, the way you actually live. So to me, it's just such an important place to not only connect with people in the moments when they need you the most, or for them to not need you because they are getting informed before, but also it's an opportunity to really be there with your audience. I feel the issue is that these regulations might trick creativity at some point, but I feel people need to move that ahead and really think on the opportunities. And you see it because there are amazing campaigns for companies like Pfizer where you see the connection, you see the storytelling, meaning that it's possible. It's just that you need to take take the time to understand the right words and how to really connect with these people in the moment where they need you the most. So I agree with you on the opportunity and the beauty of the marketing when it touched these important moments for people's life.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about is so a lot of what teams do is educating healthcare providers. And often, one of the ways that teams choose to do that is go to annual meetings where certain providers get together. So recently, the American Society of Clinical Oncology meeting, which happens every June in Chicago. And so I'm thinking about, and when you go and you see industry and people, different pharmaceutical companies have these huge booths. I mean, huge. There's, putting forward like all of their data and helping, make sure that, people want to come in, want to learn more. But I was thinking about an example of where companies, don't have big budgets. And I think that there's some creativity. Like, what if you don't have a big booth? What if you just have a few dollars? Like, what can you do that's creative? And so I share that to say that, yes, pharmaceutical marketing does sit within a box, a regulatory box from the FDA, but I think there's so much room within that to really do something that's meaningful. When I think about my own journey as a patient, as a caregiver, I have a mother who's 74 and I'm a primary caregiver for her. I have a daughter. I'm also, the chief mom officer in my house. I also, have my own healthcare that I'm managing. And so when I think about sort of where my different journeys are and how, pulling together insights about someone like me or me can really help shape creativity and ideas. I was listening to a patient speak in market research, and this patient suffers from chronic pain. And they were talking about when they go and seek help, when the pain gets so bad, they are often dismissed by healthcare providers. And so as they were talking about what is the tipping point that drives them to seek care, and the way that it was languaged was something along the lines of the pain of the disrespect that I get in a hospital setting, like my personal pain has to far outweigh that in order for me to do something. And that's real.
Wow.
That's like a real insight that, it can get languaged or written up in a report as patients wait to seek care. But the insight, the story behind that data point, it is so powerful. And it speaks to how there's a role for pharma to think about all of the social determinants of health, especially in the therapeutic areas that I work in, that pharma can really play a role there. Not everyone can get to a center of excellence to be treated for certain conditions.
Yes.
Not everyone can take the time off work. Not everyone has a caregiver who can help them navigate the system. And so I think from where I started, 20 years ago in this industry to where we are now, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go.
It's so exciting what you shared, because I see with leaders like you, honestly, it's how we can see this industry and any industry moving towards storytelling and connecting with human beings. Because I feel sometimes in marketing, I see some campaigns that really loses the whole point of connecting with what's really happening. And, when you share that specific, and I'm connecting this in my brain because my brain explodes when you share it. I'm connecting it with these like hyper local campaigns where I will take you to another place like 100% different, which is Bad Bunny concert and the campaign he did to drive people to Puerto Rico. And his whole album was about specific things that I'm from Venezuela and I didn't connect with them specifically. And people from Latin America, they didn't connect with it, but we connected with the feeling of what he was sharing, right? And that connection with the feeling make it something so local, hyper local, into something global. So if we share, instead of saying like as a pharmaceutical product, right, we're here to help, or we're here when you need it the most, or whatever, if we share that specific story that you just share, it will make connect everyone regardless of the DC, because that's a feeling you end up feeling at some point as well, or someone can feel like you connect with the specific of someone else, and that story helps you connect with more, if that makes sense. So I think sharing specific insights, regardless whether those insights applies directly to everyone or not, will really help people connect and will transform the industry in a way that it's more people driven as it should, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think to your point, a lot of people can probably share a story about going to see a healthcare provider and feeling like they weren't listening,
Mm-hmm.
feeling like they were dismissed. And so that idea of being in pain, both physical and emotional pain,
Wow. Wow.
and how, we can acknowledge one and help with the other, that's what makes what we do so powerful.
Yes.
And it's such an awesome responsibility. I mean, patients really are North Star. And for me personally, there's just something so, just human about people's stories. I've worked in a lot of different therapeutic areas, and I've worked with cancer patients, which is sad and motivating, having lost two parents to cancer. But I also have worked in therapies like overactive bladder, and hearing women tell their stories about basically being stuck at home, being afraid to go out because of overactive bladder. I mean, to me, those stories, those insights are just as powerful,
Correct.
no matter what condition someone that might be suffering from. And there's a real opportunity.
So inspiring. Thank you for sharing. I think this conversation will be really meaningful for everyone, and not only in your industry, but industries in general, because at the end of the day, as marketers, we're trying to connect with people, and what best way to connect with them than listening to them and using those insights to actually create something for them. So moving to the next section of the podcast is a quick fire round. I will ask you a few questions. You say whatever comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Love it. So, commercial spot or social media?
Commercials.
Winning an award or achieve results?
Achieve results all day, every day.
Who creates the company? The audience or the team members?
Team members.
What's harder in marketing? To innovate or to build trust?
Trust.
One word that defines your leadership style.
Supportive.
One word that defines your marketing philosophy.
People-centric.
Love it. What a word. Thank you for sharing, my love. So, to close this beautiful episode, I want to ask you, what does it mean to you to be a woman who brands? And what advice would you give to a woman in the creative industry? Especially if we can target this question to a woman in a high level role in the creative industry.
Sure. Let me take your first question first. So, what does it mean to be a woman who brands? And to me, that means a few different things. It means being what I would call, I'm going to make up a phrase, but I think it works here, an identity architect.
Okay.
And by identity architect, what I mean is shaping how people, how products, how even organizations, see themselves in the world. So it's not just messaging, it's meaning. That's like part one. To me, it's also being a connector. And I see that in the role that I have, day to day. I see that in the work that I do outside of my day job, but it's about bringing together people, ideas, and purpose. It's about creating space and building bridges. And so the last thing I would say about being a woman who brands, it's about being a CLO. And by CLO, I mean continuous learning organism. That I want to be, and I can't take credit for that. I had a client who is a good personal friend of mine still say that, but it's the idea that, branding, like life, like learning, should never be static. And so the more that we observe, that we question, that we adapt, the better that we get at telling stories that stick. So being a woman who brands is about trying to bring clarity, trying to build connections, and to be curious.
Love it. Thank you for such an answer. I will change a little bit the intro of this podcast based on your love it, honestly. So what advice would you give to a woman who brand in the creative industry, especially in a high position role?
One of the things that I would say is that the advice that I would give is that you don't have to have it all figured out, right? If you look back at my background, you will see that my path isn't linear. And even though I've been in the industry and have been working for a long time, my path still, isn't linear. And so you can be, great at your role and still not get the recognition that honestly that people deserve. And so, sometimes you can plant a seed today and that it won't bloom for a while, but it's still worth planting. And so another piece of advice, or two pieces of advice I would give is, I believe honestly that things work out the way that they're supposed to be. If you had asked me 2.5 years ago, would I be sitting here? The answer is no. And so that even if you don't know what the path looks like, like, and things can be messy. And even as people continue to rise, that things can still be messy. And some of the best moments that I have, and I expect that I will continue to have, came from detours that I didn't expect. The other piece of advice that I will give, and it's one that I talk to my family about a lot, especially my daughter who's 16, is this proverb of a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And so it's a reminder to me to continually, speak up about the things that I'm interested in, the things that I aspire to, and the value that I can bring. Part of the role that I have at Pfizer came not because there was a job description for it. Well, there was, but because I did. I saw a need. I had a conversation. I thought I could do that. And so, I would say that the best opportunities, or not all of them, but some of them have come from creating, my own space. And so that would be advice that I would give and continue to give, whether you're just starting out or whether you're like me and you've been in this space or in your space, whatever space that is, for a while. It's continuing to know your value and to ask for what you want. Don't assume that someone's, if you do a good job, you work really hard, that someone's going to recognize you. Ask for what you want.
Love it. Thank you so much, Kim. I knew this conversation will be amazing, but it was better than I expected. So really thank you for sharing your insights, your point of view, your advices. And yeah, it was just exciting. Hope for our path to keep crossing. And to all women who brand, listening or reading, remember your voice matters and your creativity has the power to inspire and lead. Until next time. Bye, Kim. Thank you.
Bye.